welcome everybody to today's Tech Teach Session 3. Today we're going to be exploring the fascinating world of the Metaverse. I'm Sinead Shackley, a Director at Liberty IT, and along with Danielle Keenan from Kainos and Colin Duffy from Allstate, we're part of a school subcommittee within the Software Alliance, and we developed Tech Teach, which is a monthly information session for teachers. It's delivered by different members of the Software Alliance, and together we want to share skills and experiences with the local educators to help you bring the latest technologies into your classroom. And ultimately what we're trying to get to is inspiring your students to continue or to consider studying computing education. Today, I'm very delighted to introduce you to Andy O'Sullivan. Andy is a technical and innovation consultant at Liberty IT. Liberty IT is a local software solutions organisation and part of the global Liberty Mutual Group. Andy's going to take some time to share brilliant insights on the Metaverse and some tools that can be used in your classroom. I'm hoping that Andy's talk will maybe take 20-25 minutes, and you can ask questions using the chat, and we'll also leave a little bit of time for questions at the end. But just in case we don't get through all the questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and we will get back to you after the session. So that's all for me for now. Andy, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Sinead, and welcome everybody. Thanks for for listening in. The Shane said I'm Andy O'Sullivan. I'm based down in County Kildare, but I'm going to talk today about the Metaverse and also related technologies, virtual reality and augmented reality. Because there's probably even in my tech circles there'd be a bit of confusion about the difference between certain concepts and certain technologies. So what I'm going to cover the next 20 or 25 minutes are high level what are these three things, and what's the way to use them and experience with them and try them out, and also what potentially coming down the road, or which of these is a technology with staying power. So the Metaverse, and so as I set off by saying that it's a concept that doesn't really exist yet. So the Metaverse, in its ideal state, is one massive virtuality platform. Basically where people can do a lot of stuff. They can meet, work, be entertained, trade, actual commerce there, meet people, but there is not yet one Metaverse, so it's I suppose it's similar to the internet, so there isn't one place where everybody goes to on the internet. There's only quite large places, so there's TikTok or Instagram or Snapchat or Facebook or LinkedIn, or there's BBC.com, or CNN, or places like that where which have large amounts of people who actually go there. There's some people think the things like Roblox or Fortnite are almost like almost metaverses in the sense of Fortnite's played by a few hundred million people all around the world who come together to a virtual a virtual game, and in the game they can play games, they can actually create new levels and new games, they can chat to each other. So something like Roblox or Fortnite actually has a lot of the elements that you might see in a metaverse, but there isn't one yet. If we as Liberty Mutual as this big insurance company, if we said, right, we want to open a virtual reality insurance store in the Metaverse, there is no one Metaverse, so we'd have to think, okay, what VR platform or app would we go to, I included this slide because David from the Software Alliance mentioned this to me about 2 weeks ago, that I should tell people that the Metaverse is not the multiverse, and I actually forgot about it. But I was telling my 13-year-old daughter a couple of days ago, I'm giving a talk on Thursday about the Metaverse, and she said, "Oh, what, Marvel?" And I was like, "Oh no, it's not Marvel." And I don't get to that early, but because it's an obvious thing to conflate with each other. So it's like the metaverse itself, kind of like how does it actually work, or kind of so how does it work now in its early stages? You know, so kind of it mainly involves using virtuality headsets and a lot of technologies that kind of are used for for normal internet stuff. So servers, content, graphics, applications, users, developers, kind of it's the same sort of ecosystem, albeit people will or would consume it wearing a virtuality headset on their heads, basically. Kind of a lot of content is actually viewable on a normal screen, kind of where kind of you can use your mouse, your finger to kind of move it around in a 360 manner, but kind of, I suppose, the real kind of immersive feel of kind of you can look around and walk around kind of does require a headset. It's worth mentioning that kind of there was probably when the real hype kind of got going on the metaverse around 2-3 years ago, kind of that there's a lot of association with it with Web3, if anybody has heard that, and certain technologies like blockchain and NFTs, and kind of so it's worth mentioning the kind of the conflation of blockchain and metaverse is kind of being kind of put to the side now, as kind of there's actually no need for technologies that. It is more kind of it's a standard technologies would be used in the internet, but so it's worth mentioning because if anybody comes across even some kind of pretty decent consulting or government reports, for maybe kind of 3 years ago, there's a lot of mention of blockchain, whereas if you see more recent reports, there's no mention of it, and kind of so it's important to note as well that kind of it may be driven first by enterprise use and then kind of more widespread in consumer, for a number of reasons. Virtuality kind of absolutely exists today, and it's actually very advanced, so kind of it's main kind of so there's a few reasons why it isn't as widespread, let's say, as as iPhones or Android phones, and kind of like one of the reasons is you do have to wear it on your head. It just isn't as easy to use as a phone is. But kind of the latest devices, and I go over them and kind of intro to, like the one on screen there, I think is the Oculus, or sorry, the Meta Quest 2. There's actually there's Meta Quest 3 out there as well. But kind of this is a highly advanced the device, and when you wear it, kind of there's an awful lot of kind of really good kind of content and experiences that you couldn't really do kind of anywhere else, and kind of so, there's games, there's movies, kind of it's used for architectural things, industrial use, kind of filmmaking, kind of a lot of films these days, kind of the directors kind of view kind of the scenes or the action scenes or whatever in VR kind of beforehand. Digital twins is a big one, kind of I'll mention that again kind of in few so kind of a lot of different things. Augmented reality is basically where you're looking at kind of at virtual content, but you also see kind of the real world around you. So kind of typically with virtual reality, you're wearing a headset, and pretty much the only thing you see is whatever virtual content which has been shown to you. But kind of if anybody here kind of uses Snapchat, or if your children or students use Snapchat, I'm assuming they do, kind of all those filters, you kind of and the funny filters that might use in photos or videos, that's augmented reality. It's kind of layering kind of virtual content on the real world, kind of through a lens, and kind of, and so the most common kind of use of it is through the camera on a mobile phone. The other is kind of other ways of doing it. There's certain augmented reality headsets. So certain experimental cars, kind of in the windscreens, have kind of AR content, kind of to displayed and things like that. So what is the difference between VR and the metaverse? If a student asks you, so kind of VR is kind of the technology and the content itself, so kind of the headsets, the applications, the 3D content or 3D experiences that you can actually kind of use, kind of using the headsets. Where with the metaverse itself, as I said at the start, is kind of an ideal. It's kind of, if we had one main place, we're kind of we come home from work or school, and we put on kind of the headset, and we basically enter a virtual world. All of our friends are there as well, and no matter kind of where they are in the world. But kind of there's a quote here from a guy called James Watson, who works for the Galactic Glimpse Group, which I heard him say this at a conference about 2 years ago. We say basically that the metaverse currently is a set of unconnected planets. This is kind of there's kind of kind of similar to the internet, where as I said, if you have Snapchat and you've TikTok, there's the metaverse is kind of at the minute, like if you buy a virtuality device, there's plenty of interesting things which you can do there, but they aren't really connected, kind of. So you can't, virtually walk from one experience into a different experience and see kind of, the same people or friends which you interacted with before. So what it could be, kind of, it's kind of the sky's the limit here, or kind of your imagination is the limit. So if anybody's read Ready Player One by Ernest Cline, or if they've seen the Steven Spielberg movie of it, it's kind of like that does view this kind of this massive world where basically you can kind of be anybody you want in that world, and you can go to a whole lot of different planets or different cities. So it's a kind of it could be pretty much anything people could want it to be, but as I said, it doesn't really exist yet outside of individual experiences. I suppose why use virtuality? If you haven't used it before, kind of it's basically a fantastic way of experiencing something in a way that you're not going to experience it elsewhere. Kind of so it's the North Star, kind of the ideal state, which kind of VR companies want to go for, is this concept of presence. And kind of what the term presence mean in virtuality terms is that you actually forget that you're not in the real world, and when you're using it, you feel like you are somewhere else, and I would say that kind of it's not, we're not fully there yet, but there's a lot of experiences that actually, when I actually take off the headset and all of a sudden kind of the daylight comes rushing back, and I realize, I'm sitting downstairs in the sitting room, or I'm sitting in the office, that actually is a moment where I realize, oh, hang on a second, I'm back in the real world now, especially if it's a really immersive game. So kind of the screenshot you're seeing on screen there is kind of a promotional image of Beat Saber, which is kind of the biggest and most well-known virtuality game. And kind of, you play that game standing up with the headset on, you're holding the controllers, you're extremely active, you're moving around, you're kind of you're dodging these virtual things, you're kind of holding these kind of virtual lightsabers in your hands. And like when you do that, you really do kind of forget that you're standing in your living room at home. There's some great games that Beat Saber, kind of Pistol Whip. It's fantastic for training. So kind of you can see, kind of when large companies like ourselves are looking at kind of, his use cases for VR, kind of training is an obvious one. So kind of, to things where kind of, like surgeons are learning how to do procedures, or kind of, getting more detailed models, of hearts and kind of things like that, where they can actually go in virtuality and practice, procedures before actually doing it. Kind of safety training, kind of, and so training that otherwise would just be too expensive to do, or, or too far away, or just too dangerous to do, so kind of like I was at a conference in Vienna a month or two ago, and kind of there was a company was basically showing off its firefighter training in virtuality, and they've actually combined like real physical hoses with virtuality. So kind of when the firefighters are training with it, they're wearing a headset and they're holding a hose in their hands that actually isn't firing out water, but in the experience they're watching in virtuality, it is firing out the water. So you can imagine kind of they can have an infinite amount of fires in virtuality, kind of when they're training. It's obviously worth mentioning learning, and kind of, so there's kind of, I'm saying theoretically because there's a whole lot of stuff online and from educational companies, kind of that learning in virtuality is probably a better way to learn than I do PowerPoint, presentations or something like that. Kind of, I suppose I'm saying theoretically here because you probably want to do some research into kind of is anything kind of peer reviewed, etc. But so the general concept is, if you kind of experience something or you learn something when it's all around you and it's more immersive and no distractions, you're more likely to remember it, and so like you folks are watching this presentation on your computer, you might also be checking your email on your phone at the same time, whereas kind of if we were all in virtuality here, it'd be all around you. It's the construction and building and architectural use cases, like these are actually really valuable kind of use cases for VR at the minute. As I mentioned at a conference in Vienna, a while ago, I basically met some folks from a a Norwegian company called Jotun, and they basically make paint. So they're basically saying, if you've ever been in an office and it's paint on the wall, it's probably their paint. So it's kind of, but to tell me the reason why they're at the conference was that they basically build large kind of factories, all over the world, like in Turkey and China, wherever else. But now what they do is, before they build factories, they basically build them in virtual reality, and kind of as kind of a digital twin of what they're going to build. And so kind of so they basically do walk-arounds. They can go around the factory before it's built and make sure it's fit for purpose. And kind of they gave an example of where they're kind of trying out in virtuality a new factory, and they realized, some of the large machinery, to make the paint or mix the paints, it wouldn't actually fit through the doors of the factory. So it's kind of, and then the same kind of, the cost of making these things available in VR kind of is like they've already made their money back in engineering and architectural changes, which they didn't have to make. Whereas kind of, in previous factory builds, there's a certain amount of money spent after the case, to fix things. So kind of when you think about VR, kind of the concept of digital twins, of kind of showing things that exist in the real world, but also showing them in VR, kind of, be it, like a scan of someone before an operation or factory before it's built, is really interesting and really valuable. This is something I want to show in terms of digital twins, and how these videos work now. There's no sound on these, but kind of what you can see here on my left is my son a couple of years ago, and kind of what you see on the left is actually what this application is doing is it's scanning him in real time, and it's creating a little digital twin skeleton of him on the left. So hopefully this will work if you can see it. So kind of as he's walking up the hill there, there's basically kind of a digital twin of him walking up, and kind of like this sort of kind of, like a person kind of tracking, like this used to be incredibly expensive, and it's something, kind of, if you watch like Lord of the Rings and Gollum or something, that 20 years ago was incredibly expensive to make. I shot this on my iPhone, and kind of like here's one of me here, kind of doing some exercising at home, and kind of, again, this is basically a digital twin of me, and this is a simple application I made, in a couple of days. So I suppose you can see kind of the potential of a technology like this to understand the real world and mimic it, which I think is interesting. Let's move on from my kids there. So it's worth mentioning as well, like I think I mentioned at the start, like, it isn't just kind of, I suppose, virtual content, and you don't necessarily have to view it in a headset. So kind of there's an awful lot of kind of virtuality content, which is, which you can watch in a headset and you look around, but you can actually also view it in like on a normal phone or normal laptop. It's kind of I won't go into these now because they're quite large, but I'm assuming we're sharing the slides afterwards. So kind of there's a whole lot of kind of content which been filmed in 360. So if you watch these videos on YouTube, kind of like with your mouse, if you're using a computer, or your finger if on a phone, you can actually kind of put your finger on the video, and turn it around or kind of spin it, and basically the video moves. So you can see behind you and on the top of you and stuff. So kind of the one on the left here is basically where you go inside a space shuttle, and kind of you're basically being taken on a video tour of a space shuttle. But kind of you can look all around you, can look down at the floor, you can kind of look up at the ceiling and stuff. And the one on the right is kind of where you're basically exploring a nebula in space. But so the point is, you kind of explore these kind of immersive environments without a headset, which is good as well. So downsides of virtuality, kind of, I suppose, there just isn't as much content as with phones and that, so kind of, if you get an iPhone and go to the App Store, there's probably literally millions of apps at this stage. There isn't as much content in virtuality. From a social viewpoint, you kind of are closed off from people around you. Kind of, so there has been changes to this. So recently, the most recent devices have a thing called pass-through, basically just cameras on the front of devices. And so, like, as well as seeing virtual content, it might also show you kind of some of the world around you. But I suppose, even if you can see it, the people in the room around you have no way of interacting with you, really. So kind of it's kind of an individual kind of, experience, albeit you can meet people who are also using VR from anywhere in the world in it. And it's not the most accessible of technology. Certain devices don't work with, with certain glasses, people with certain physical disabilities, or certain types of epilepsy, etc. Like they can't use it. If you're prone to motion sickness, so like I personally I'm prone to motion sickness. So kind of there's certain experiences like roller coasters and stuff that I just can't do. So kind of it isn't the most accessible of the technologies. Kind of a few of the headsets here. I won't spend too much time on these. So Meta, which is basically Facebook, like they're the current kind of the current market leaders in the technology. So kind of, if anyone is buying one, kind of any of the Meta Quest ones are kind of to top of the range. Just some competitors, the Pico 4, there's a PlayStation VR, which you also need a PlayStation 4. But I also want to mention a more kind of cheaper way, which is way kind of I start off on the two. It's called a Google Cardboard, and it literally costs. I mean, I've seen ones online for $5. We're kind of, it's basically a design which Google put out. Where it's basically two kind of plastic lenses in a cardboard design, and the way it works is if you put like a video or an application which is virtual reality kind of enabled in this device, kind of you can see there kind of the screens are split. Kind of that's basically how virtuality works. But kind of you can see kind of the view is split into two different views, left eye and right eye. But kind of with this cardboard device with the two lenses, it kind of merges them together. So what you do is you just buy one of these online for like £8 or £9. You download an app that supports virtuality, or YouTube, because YouTube's a lot of 360 content. You just push your phone in and you're using virtual reality. And this is really cool, But I wanted to mention as well kind of Vision Pro, which is kind of, if people haven't heard about this, and kind of so when this came out, people like myself and Sinead and Danielle and that will be pretty excited about this. And kind of I remember we talked about it all day in work, and kind of I went home and I was talking to my neighbors outside, and my kids were playing football. So have you heard about Vision Pro? And they all said no. So kind of it's it's basically Apple's. They don't call it virtuality. They don't call it augmented reality. They call it spatial computing. It costs a whole lot more than all the rest of the devices. It's launching early next year. It seems to be built kind of with a whole lot of brand new technologies. They've spent years on it. They spent a lot of money on it. They say there's about 5,000 new patents in it, and they say they've solved. So things like the motion sickness in traditional virtuality, they say that they've solved because it's new technology, etc. It's very expensive. There's no controllers with it, so kind of like most virtuality things you buy, they have handheld controllers. There's no controllers with the Apple Vision Pro, so you interact with it through your voice, your hands, kind of different things you're doing with your hands, and also eye tracking, so kind of will understand like what you're looking at, your eyes move around, and kind of so they call it spatial computing because it's kind of they envisage you can still see the world around you, kind of via video feed, but the camera's on the front of the device, but you also have kind of all the stuff around you, So if you're in the office, kind of you've got an internet browser in front of you, you've got your email on the right, you could be watching Netflix on the left. So kind of it's a brand new device which isn't out yet, but it will launch early next year, and you'll probably hear a lot about it when it actually launches. But it's a lot of cash for an unproven device. Sinead is sick of me asking at this stage to buy one next year. So the future, augmented reality headsets like the Vision Pro, which basically allow you to see the real world, but also kind of virtual content, are probably the future. But if the cost and size is significantly reduced, you can see the Apple one there is still quite big. So potentially, in 5 or 10 years, if they're the same size as normal glasses, or maybe kind of ski goggles or something, there might be more, but kind of we are talking kind of 5 or 10 years. So kind of the mobile phone isn't going anywhere anytime soon. I want to show these to you as well. Over now, we're not out of time, but so it's kind of just to show you kind of the sort of stuff which potentially you could do if you're wearing a pair of augmented reality glasses. So kind of this is something else what I built a couple of years ago. I've called it an office in a field. So kind of it's basically kind of what you're viewing it through, just through the camera on your mobile phone. In the future, theoretically, you could view it through the Vision Pro if you're wearing one. But it's basically kind of a virtual reality office out in the field beside my house, and in there are various content. I got pictures of my kids and stuff. Kind of there's a desk there with kind of my with some a fake cup of coffee and things like that. So kind of just skip on a bit in it. Got a fake TV. I got a photo with some of my colleagues there. And I always think it's one of the craziest thing about it is when you look back out on the real world. So kind of you're holding this phone and you kind of feel you're in a virtual world, but actually the real world is kind of out there. And it's very funny watching people use this because they're viewing it on their phone. So you're viewing that video which you're seeing there on their phone. Every single person, when they use this, when they leave the virtual room, they duck their head, so their head won't off the top, which is really interesting. So almost done. So kind of, I just wanted to mention as well in terms of careers, kind of, it's a bit like the internet. How the internet, and mobile phones have resulted in exponential different types of jobs. So there's obviously the hardware and software. These are devices which are constantly evolving. So kind of there's absolutely kind of really good careers on both. Designing the devices of the future and I guess the software which runs on them. Kind of the data science. Kind of like I mentioned the eye tracking, the Vision Pro does. Like there's a whole lot more data which these devices can collect. And design as well. So kind of actually what content are these used for? Like what experiences kind of are possible with these devices? So kind of these are kind of high-end jobs which kind of aren't going anywhere. A few more slides, kind of just finish off some details there, kind of on where to get kind of more information on Google Cardboard and kind of and some places to get apps for it if you want to try it. And if I put into just some other resources online as well, kind of other kind of teaching resources or experiences which kind of potentially you could show your students. There's an interesting one from the New York Times. New York Times actually has an awful lot of kind of 360 content, kind of journalism and that. So it's interesting enough. But I'll stop there. So thanks very much for your attention. And if anybody's got any questions, please ask.
We do, Andy. We have a question there back when you were talking about the digital twins. What was the software that you were using to develop the digital twins?
Well, like of the skeleton of kind of me and kind of the that was basically kind of using an Apple software, so it's kind of if you develop apps for the iPhone, there's basically free software, which you can use to make Apple apps, and kind of and as part of that suite of software, there is capabilities in there basically to do kind of AI and AR kind of tasks, so kind of in the video I showed, kind of it was doing two main things. It was recognizing my hands and my joints kind of moving around. So that's basically kind of it's a computer vision kind of data science model which is running in real time in the app, to spot me. And then there's kind of a separate Apple provided capability, which is basically painting that into skeleton on screen. So it's out of the box from Apple, so kind of if anybody can develop an Apple app for their phone, they'd also be able to create something like that.
Andy, I think we have another question there from Catherine.
Hi. No,
hey.
I was just say how great it is. In the school that I'm in, actually, my 6th years are doing a 360 virtual tour of the school.
Oh, nice.
And then you can put it on the headsets and you can walk through. And as well as, putting it on the website and stuff too, it's great for SEN kids, who might be a bit nervous about coming in on open night. They can actually go for a full virtual walkthrough through the school, which is really good. And it's quite easy to actually now, stitch together a tour. They're using the Insta360 camera.
Very good.
Which is great.
Yeah, and it's that sort of thing that the kind of, as I said, like 10 years ago would have been expensive to do, and now it's not,
Yeah, now students can do it, now peers can do it, and they can actually use the software, upload it very quickly, and it's very easy compared to what it would have been probably 5-10 years ago. It's very accessible, which is great. It's great to see.
Cool.
Brilliant. Listen, that takes us spot on to 4 o'clock. So, Andy, thanks so much for that very passionate briefing for us on the metaverse. And maybe Santa will be nice to you this year and bring you one of those Vision Pros that you've been desperate for all year. But thanks a million for your time and for the teachers that joined us on the session today. We will send out, obviously, the slides, the recording, the resources following the session. And if you do have questions on the metaverse after this, please feel free to ping them through and we'll endeavour to answer them offline. But thanks a million for your time.
Thank you so much, Andy. That was great. Really enjoyed that. Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
Andrew.
Thank you.
See you now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.